I'm glad you're here. If you've been listening to The Deepening Place, you'll remember back in November, Lucas the Abstract was a guest. I wanted to have him on to give us his perspective about being a Black conservative man in America. I saw on his social media account that he attended the rally in Washington on January the 6th, so I invited him back on just so that he could give us a first-hand account about what he saw and experienced there. As I said in the last episode, I believe that these first-hand accounts are really important and part of good journalism because it allows a person to form their own opinion and decide what they believe. So I'm really glad that you're here, and I hope you enjoy the episode. So we're recording.
Cool.
So, hello and welcome to The Deepening Place. I'm here with our old friend, Lucas. How are you, Lucas?
Hi, I'm good. And thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. And the reason that I wanted you to come back so soon, which it really has been a while, but I heard through following you on social media that you were actually at the march last Wednesday. You were at the...
Yes.
What was it called?
I'm not even sure what it was called.
But you were there.
In my mind, I called it the Save America.
Okay, the Save America March. Well, tell me, I think anyone who listens to The Deepening Place has heard a little bit about your backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And for the people who have not, if they haven't listened to that episode, I'm sure that they will go back and listen to it now. But why don't you just say a little bit about yourself?
Okay, yeah, definitely. I'm born and raised in Chicago. Now I'm a California resident, and I like to travel a lot. I've traveled the world over and will continue to. And when it comes to political affiliation, I have never identified with the Republicans, and I don't identify with the Republicans now, and I don't identify as a Democrat either. I'm definitely not a Democrat. I support righteousness, and that's what led me to support Donald Trump, is because I support righteousness. I will follow Trump and his political affiliation wherever he goes.
So you're saying if he were to branch off and run again in 2024, even if he's a part of the, pirate party, that's you support him as a candidate.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
I mean, that's really interesting. I have one other person that I knew that went to the march, and I just interviewed him. And it's so strange to me that he said the same thing. He said, I don't necessarily identify as a Republican, but I feel like Donald Trump was standing up for some of the things that are important to me.
And also, never before, I know for me personally, never before have I been so informed about American politics when Donald Trump started running. So I thank Donald Trump for getting me involved and for getting me involved in American politics and international politics. And that happened to be coincidentally the same time that I started to do world travels. And I started to experience other cultures and other societies, and even experience other societies' law enforcement, unfortunately. That's what made me appreciate and love America so much even more. And Donald Trump is the reason that he has exposed a lot of what's wrong with America. And that's why I fight for him, I fight for America, and I fight for the freedoms that America has.
Okay. And so what do you attribute that being more informed to? Like when the original election was happening in 2016, did you just kind of dig in and study more, or how do you feel like you've become more informed?
What really did it is I would actually have to give tribute to the corrupt media. It was the corrupt media that really did it, because here we have a man, now mind you too, in case anyone doesn't know, I liked and admired Donald Trump even before his election. I liked him as a person, I liked him as a businessman, And I thought he had a very upstanding, fair character. I
Okay.
paid very close attention to him and his family on the Celebrity Apprentice, and the way they handled things and the way they were in the boardroom, I felt very, very comfortable supporting. So when he started running, and all of a sudden it was the media that put it on alert that he's all of these, they just started creating that he's homophobic, transphobic, xenophobic, and they just made him put this man out to be just a horrible person. So that's what made me research into his policies. And not only that, the policies that were the alternative. And I really did more research, and I really, really saw that I made a mistake by voting for Barack Obama, because I realized that what his policies were and the ideologies on the left were not in alignment with how I live my life and how I would like to live my life and how I would like to be an American. They did not match up with the ideologies for Democrats. So I looked into Donald Trump's ideology, and I was checking off down the line, check, check. Almost everything that this man was saying, I agreed with. And not only that, everything he said he would do, he did.
You supported when he was getting elected, the things that he said he was going to do, and you feel satisfied with his job performance, so to speak.
Definitely. This man has gone above and beyond to keep his promises to the American people. But not only that, let's examine. He did it with both hands tied behind his back. That is somewhat of a Rocky Balboa moment, if not a superhero moment. The American people, and guess what? He did it for free. He's the only president to donate 100% of his salary. He gave up his billionaire luxury lifestyle to work 15 hours a day around the clock to serve the American people, to strengthen America. That's admirable, because when America is strengthened, every group is strengthened. The left pushes this identity politics and don't even realize, I'm sure they do realize though, that is more divisive than not. Whereas focusing on all Americans as a whole, why do we need to vote for someone based on their gender, or based on their sexuality, or based on their race? Why not strengthen America as a whole? Because when America is strengthened, everyone is strengthened. I know I would be strengthened as an American and as a Black person. I feel that women will be strengthened, gay people will be strengthened, Latinos will be strengthened, Asians, small businesses, everything will be strengthened when America benefits. And I feel that Donald Trump is the only president to put that plan actually into motion. It's done.
Okay. So for you, I just want to make sure I understand this. You kind of knew of and followed Donald Trump before, and it seemed like the world didn't really hate him. But when he started running for office, all of a sudden he developed all these character flaws, according to the media. And you found that interesting. So you started kind of digging into that a little bit.
Yeah. And I get it. Like, I got it. He was an outsider. He wasn't part of the club. That whole club of the Democrats and the Republicans, they're all in the swamp together. Here comes a man who has extremely magnificent business acumen, right? And he wants to come and apply that business acumen to America, because America is a business. It has a GDP just like the other top business, right? And he wanted to apply that to it and shake things up and put America first. And that's why they hated him. He was an outsider who wasn't welcomed in the club.
Okay. I want everybody to know a little bit about, I feel like you have kind of this cool group, friends, I don't know, tell me about the show that you have. Just tell me a little bit. I don't think we talked about that last time.
Oh, yes. The show, we have a podcast, and it's called You Ain't Black. And it's interesting because it's three Black guys, myself, Kit Cunningham, and MAGA Hulk. And then we have Carden. He's not Black, though. Carden is the producer, and he's part of the show as well, with the commentary as well. And then we have Cody as well. The concept of the show is basically conservative voices, free thinkers, as I like to say, coming from Black men who have free voices to share and that are not in alignment with the Democratic plantation, as we like to call it. It's really the show that we named it that pretty much as like a tongue-in-cheek moment for Joe Biden, because we have the audacity to think for ourselves, and how dare we get out of line and not vote Democrat. And it's interesting that someone like Joe Biden can even publicly say something like that and make a distinction as to who's Black or not.
Yeah.
And he gets away with it.
I think that's something that the conservative people that I've talked to, and I think we talked about this. My goal for this podcast is to bring people to the table, to meet in the middle. I feel like that's how we're going to have that love revolution. It's kind of like what you were saying earlier. If we see each other as humans and not as Black or white or gay or, all the other things that we're like branching off into, see each other as humans first.
Mm-hmm.
And, know that we have that shared love in our heart. To me, that's how we're going to make progress to change the world.
Just to branch on that really fast, Angela, is when you really think about it, aren't all Americans the same when it comes to what we want out of life? Isn't that why even the people who aren't born Americans, but who are naturalized citizens, they are American, or people who may be first generation American who've been here for generations? The reason why we love America is for its freedoms and for the way of life that it provides. I don't see why anyone would be willing to give that up. And when at the end of the day, all Americans want the same thing. I mean, what's the American dream? I mean, whether you want to own a home or not, or own a condo or live in a nice apartment, we all want essentially to raise our families the way we want to. We want to send our children to the schools that we want. Mm-hmm. We want to be able to get an education if that's the route we want to go. We want to be able to work a job and provide for our families.
I agree with you on that. And I think one thing that you said that stood out to me is the way we want to. And that's been such a big deal in the American dream and the vision, is that you get to pursue happiness in the way you would like to, and I do too. People go way back and criticize. And the way I look at it is evolution. We keep getting better. We keep getting closer. And I was thinking at this election, it was only 100 years ago that someone like me, being a woman, had the right to vote in a presidential election. Only 100 years ago. Well, that doesn't make me say this is an awful country. It makes me say we kept going until we got that right. Now, let's look around. What else do we have left? Let's keep going until everybody feels like they have the right to pursue happiness and they feel free and they feel like 100% United States citizen. I think it's kind of cool how we keep going toward that ideal.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. We have to keep going towards that ideal of the individual pursuit of happiness, because your pursuit of happiness may not be my pursuit of happiness.
Exactly.
So I don't think it's right that government should come in and tell me what I should be doing with my life, or tell me that I'm oppressed and I need this or I need that. Mm-hmm. No. And that's where it seems like it's going. It's an insidious socialist agenda.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, Angela, do you know how many people have no idea what socialism even means?
Yeah.
Like literally grown adults. I've asked them, are they aware that AOC and Bernie Sanders are full-on socialists, and that's the agenda that they're pushing, and the Democratic Party is leaning more towards being taken over by AOC and the squad? And I would ask them, are you aware even what socialism is? And then when I would explain it to them, I would ask, are you willing to live that way? They would all say no. But you don't even realize that that's what you're voting for when you're voting for Biden and Kamala.
Yeah. I think one interesting thing, I'm a mental health professional, and I think that fear is one of the worst things that you can be. And fearful, because it just robs you of so much. From the beginning of the election, before the 2016 election, up until this point, it's just 24/7 fear about who Donald Trump is. And so people are so fearful about this person, they're not even turning around to see what their party's doing. Their eyes are locked into this monster that the media has told them Donald Trump is. And my point when I'm talking to people is fear is so, it makes you sick. And so if you could drop your fear of that person and just really look into the policies, you might completely disagree with what he's doing, but if you could take that fear off the table it would make you healthier, and it would allow you to see your fellow citizen not as someone to
Yeah,
fear. Because to me, that's where it's getting really dangerous. That's trickling down from him to the followers, and it's making that brother against brother situation that is so dangerous.
I agree. I agree. It's the fear with the hate, and then when
Yeah.
you combine that with low information, and then you combine that with a corrupt media that pushes a specific biased narrative over and over again. I mean, it's almost a question of, do you blame the sheep for being led to the slaughterhouse, or do
Yeah.
you blame the slaughterers?
Yeah. I get your point. Well, I don't want to let you get away without you telling me, because one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is I just feel like there are two people that I knew personally that were going to Washington. I knew you and another person. And so I invited both of you on because I just feel like a lot of what we're hearing, and I'm going to read you a quote. After all this happened, Biden said, "Don't call them protesters. They were a riotous mob, insurrectionist, and domestic terrorist." And I'm looking at you, Lucas, and I don't see you that way. And I don't believe for a minute you were behaving that way. So I wanted you to tell me, how does that make you feel to hear that?
It's not surprising. It's not surprising. It's the same dangerous, divisive language that comes from the Democrats, and it's been spewing out for the past 8 months. Mind you, I've never agreed with violence, but this is the same group, the same people that for the last 8 months sat by and not only watched, but encouraged the violence and the burning of American cities. We can go down the quotes. Cuomo said, "Since when does it say protests have to be peaceful?" Well, if you knew the Constitution in the First Amendment, it says peaceful assembly. You have people like Kamala saying that they shouldn't stop. The riots and the looting shouldn't stop, that they should continue. You have people like Pelosi quoted as saying that she's not surprised that more uprisings aren't happening over the country. And then you have areas like CHOP and Chaz. It's crazy. They encourage people to burn down cities, terrorize small businesses. People were murdered. So the Biden supporters destroyed this country, burned down cities, and now you have one day, which was mostly peaceful. This is literally a mostly peaceful rally that was mostly attended by normal American citizens that are patriots, that support the president and that love America. You had a few radical nuts, and you had a few imposters, a few Antifa imposters. Here's where it stems from, Angela. We have to address this from all angles, right? One of the angles is we see when BLM staged a protest several months ago at the Capitol, we see the type of military enforcement and the type of protection it had, just in case. Yeah. We're talking about one of the world's most protected buildings. And this was a planned event. It wasn't spontaneous. They knew that at least a couple of 100,000 people from across the country was going to descend on the Capitol. You mean to tell me that they only had 12 officers? I'm saying 12 because I'm just estimating, but it was 12 officers, a dozen officers to protect the Capitol from 200,000 people. And then you had the people that did foolishly and unlawfully and illegally enter the Capitol. They were all unarmed. It's not like they pulled guns and forced their way in. They were unarmed. So how does a group of unarmed nuts take over the Capitol? This was all for optics. There's even evidence of one officer who was in charge of part of the security detail, and he was asking for more security, and he was denied it.
Yeah, so I saw that in the news.
Yeah, and you have instances where you have a bunch of unarmed nuts chasing police. It looked embarrassing. It was really embarrassing. China is laughing at us. It really looked embarrassing because if that's the case, then that means that any old group of unarmed nuts can just walk into the to the Capitol and take it over.
Yeah, it was very, very concerning. Number 2 and number 3 in command of our country were in that building. And you telling me there weren't snipers all around the roof? You're telling me that the National Guard wasn't ringing at that building? It's crazy.
The fact that somebody could have entered Pelosi's office and put his feet up on the desk, that should not have been allowed any way possible. So the fact that that was allowed, and he was unarmed. It's not like he took them hostage. He was unarmed. So this was a colluded effort.
Tell me, were you at the speech? Did you go to the speech?
I had a great time out there. First of all, my entire experience out there was just a great experience
Mm-hmm.
until all of that craziness went down. But honestly, I really didn't even experience much of the craziness because by the time I got to my hotel, the check-in wasn't until 4 p.m., but I got them to get a room a little earlier. So I was able to check in at about 12:30 noon. So I checked in, went around the corner, grabbed a drink and a bite to eat. And by the time I walked over, I just started walking in the streets and I just started asking people, where are people meeting at? I had already missed the president's speech at the
Oh,
Freedom.
okay. Okay.
So I just started walking towards, they said, everybody's going to the Capitol. So I just
Yeah.
started walking towards the Capitol. And by the time I got to the Capitol, they were already inside. And I was witnessing more things, but when I got there, I wasn't aware that they were inside. It wasn't until earlier. I mean, it wasn't until later when I saw the timestamp. I was like, oh, well, at that moment, I was barely just getting there. But what the interesting thing is, from my experience, it was at least 2,000 people there. I mean, 200,000 people there. And they only had 4 porta potties. So literally, you had a mile-long line of people having to go pee and
Yeah.
relieve themselves. Unfortunately, a lot of the guys were just literally finding trees and
Yeah.
bushes
Yeah.
because that's how crazy it was, right? But once I got there, I had marked my exit strategy, number one,
Mhm.
because I operate on a spiritual frequency, right? So
Yeah.
I will never put myself in direct harm's way. I value life.
Yeah.
So as soon as I got there, I was on alert. I said, I don't know if a sniper or some crazy nut could be here and just start shooting. So I mapped out where I would run, what building I
Mhm.
would go hide behind. I spotted some metal bleachers there, and I said, okay, if anybody starts shooting, I'll go duck under those metal bleachers. I
Mhm.
had mapped my plan out. No way in the world was I going to put myself in the front or go any
Yeah.
closer because if something off, I didn't want to be in the middle of a stampede.
Yeah.
So then I heard the gunshot. When that lady got shot,
Oh.
I heard that. I was way back in the grass and I heard it. And then I started seeing smoke. At that point, honestly, I didn't know what was going on. From my vantage point, I didn't know. I thought cannons were going off at some point. And then I saw people scaling the buildings. I saw an officer move the metal barricade and started hurriedly ushering people through. And the people started going forward and I retreated. I went back. And that's
Okay.
when, at that point, I just had enough. It was cold. I had to pee again. Um, I was starting to get hungry. So I just left at that point and walked and got some food. And by the time I got to my hotel, I turned on the TV and I see that they are reporting angry mob took siege of the White House.
Mhm.
And I said, I don't even know what they're talking about. I was just there, but okay. And then that's what really made me start to think, how was that possible? And after watching all of the videos and all of the videos, I don't agree with stepping foot in that White House at all. So
Mm.
I do feel that if you unlawfully entered that building, I don't know what you were thinking, what you were expecting. You could have been shot on sight. Unlawfully entering that building while elected officials were in there congregating.
Mhm.
How do we know that they didn't have a bomb strapped to their chest or a grenade in their pocket? I'm
Yeah.
surprised more people weren't shot,
Yeah.
honestly. I just feel
So
that it was
you're saying that for the people that entered the Capitol, there wasn't a lot of wisdom there.
not at all. That was insanity. I don't even think
Yeah.
they thought that through. I think some of those people were just honest American citizen patriots, and they just blindly followed the crowd. They were hyped up in the emotions. We're storming the Capitol, rah rah rah, and they
Well,
just
it's interesting to me that, yeah, I think that too. And, you've seen the footage of the people, the really violent kind of interaction with
Mhm.
the Capitol Police. But then I've also seen footage, like you said, you saw, of them kind of moving the barrier and just saying, well, come on in then. It's like, whatever,
Mhm.
everybody's in there anyway. That just seems really odd to me. Why did they continue to let people up there?
Thank you. If
So,
this was really an insurrection siege attempt,
yeah, a lot of those people walking in looked like they were going in the gates of Disney World.
or it looked like they were on a tour of a museum, like they were
Yeah.
walking around, looking at the pictures, taking selfies in front of some of their heroes. It looked like they were on a museum tour.
So,
Yeah. Sorry, it was very foolish and dangerous and suicidal. to step foot inside that building.
Yeah, and that's something that you weren't going to be a part of.
Not at all. I will never even support that.
Yeah, right. So
I will never even support that.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about like otherwise it doesn't sound like, you got too close to the action, so to speak, but like the group of when you were around mingling or talking to people, what was the mood and the energy like? What did you notice?
Yeah. That was some of the most exciting parts because I got a chance to interact and connect with people that was literally all over the country.
Yeah.
I met some people that had took road trips, 6 to 10, 15-hour road trips to come over there, brought their children. Like you said, it did look like people were entering the gates of Disneyland at some points. They had their children with them. People had their grandparents. I'm talking about people in their 70s and 80s. It was a family event for a lot of people. And it was interesting to just connect with a lot of people. I went by myself solo. And what was so interesting is that it was so many people there. I didn't even have a chance to link up with my other crew from LA.
Oh, really?
We didn't even get a chance to link up at all. Like we were all in different parts of the town, in different hotels. And then as soon as after that event happened, they put a curfew and shut the city down. So people were just hanging out in their hotels pretty much.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that kind of put a damper. You probably would have gotten together with them after.
Definitely, because we were going to shoot a segment of the You Ain't Black show while we were out there.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
That was one of the intentions, But I did have a chance to eat some good food, and I had an overall good experience. I was upset that I missed the president's speech, though.
Just sitting at home now, hearing the coverage and the way these people that were there were portrayed, one of the things that keeps coming up on social media is white supremacy and the white supremacists. Like that was the people that were out there. And just your perspective as a Black man, what do you think about that?
I think it's dangerous, divisive lies, and a narrative that the left continues to push. The left and the Democrats continue to push a narrative that anybody who supports the president is a white supremacist, which is a lie. Just like they continue to support the narrative that BLM is a group that cares about Black people. And that's a lie. They refuse to admit that BLM is a Marxist group, that BLM is a domestic terrorist group. So nothing from the left surprises me at this point.
Let's really zoom out and think about this for a minute. We're led to believe that these are some of the most dangerous people because they're white supremacists, they're violent, they're inciting violence, they're a mob, they're domestic terrorists. So here you are, a lone Black man. You travel over to Washington, you get caught in your hotel, you walk over, and you're among all these really radical, dangerous people. According to what we're hearing in the news, you should be afraid for your life. You're alone with all these radical white supremacists. You're telling me you had the time of your life and you made all these connections.
For the most part, it's like kind of like a lot of different events. A lot of people are there and they're social. If you're social, not everybody is a social person just based on their character. I'm a social person. I'm outgoing. I like to talk to people. Just because we all support the president doesn't mean that we're all going to get along, or doesn't mean that we're all even on the same page.
True. So, do you see any other like minorities there?
Definitely. It was so many non-white people there. I met Asian people there who were first generation American. They knew what America stood for and they loved America and they knew what communism is because they came from communism. And they loved America and they was there to support the freedoms of America, and they had on Make America Great Again hats. So are these first generation Asian people, are they white supremacists too? Of course, it's a lot of Black people, and he has support from everybody. So that's why it's just a flat out lie. And that narrative is just, it just doesn't make sense. It's just a complete lie.
Well, I think it's just super helpful. And, in the old days of journalism, that's what they did. They got people that were on the scenes. They interviewed. They got different perspectives. And now we don't have that. We just have a judgment that was made in advance, and that's what we hear 24/7. So for me, it was really important to talk to the people I knew that had been there to see if some of these things that we're hearing are accurate or close to being accurate or just, blatantly false. It sounds like you had a good time and you weren't afraid for your life.
Not
you
at
feel
all.
like most people were sort of peaceable, and there were a few
Right.
bad apples that got out of control.
Definitely. And, just living in these times now, you always have to be watchful as well as pray. And you have to be mindful of your surroundings. So even though I was out there having a good time, like I had mentioned before, as soon as I got to the Capitol, I was already marking out my exit strategies, what to do in the event of something goes bad. That's how I operate.
That's using wisdom, especially in a situation like that where you just don't know.
Yeah. And I'll continue to utilize every fiber I have, every legal route possible to fight against what I don't believe in and in the direction that I don't want America to go in. And I would also like to say, too, that for everybody out there, no matter what you believe in, no matter whether you support Democrats or Republicans, no matter whether you think Donald Trump is evil or the devil himself, no matter what you believe in, if you are an American and you have enjoyed your American freedoms, and when you appreciate your American freedoms, then you will begin to see that you have to fight for them. Because when you realize what direction this country is going in, you will realize that that's not what you meant to vote for.
Yeah, and you said that you travel a lot. And I think when you travel, you feel how lucky that you are and how blessed you are to be in a country like the United States of America.
You know what, Angela, maybe on another episode, I'll have to share with you the time. It was in 2017. My sister and I traveled over to Spain, and we spent about a week over there, and we ended up getting robbed, and our passports were stolen.
Oh, wow.
So that was an adventure because we had to deal with crooked, corrupt Spaniard police, and that we realized that the government over there was corrupt. They didn't want to help us, and we had to beg for just to get directions to the American embassy. And when we reached the embassy, that was literally our sliver of hope. I felt so glad that we were able to reach the American embassy to finally get people that cared about us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're a smart guy. And I mean, like you said, you've researched all this before and being, well-traveled. I mean, you see different things, and I really appreciate you offering us your perspective today.
Thank you.
Taking the time to do it. And I look forward to see what you're going to come up with next.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angela, for having me. Thank you so much for even having your podcast. I think conversations like this are important.
Well, tell people how they can, where do you go to hear your podcast or your program with the other guys?
The You Ain't Black show is streaming on YouTube. So you can just go to YouTube and type in You Ain't Black. We're the first things to pop up. Be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. And we have new content every week. A new episode we recorded this weekend should be dropping today, actually. And
one thing that I think I know about you guys is you're probably given some good information, but it seems like you're having the time of your life. I mean, there's a lot of laughter.
And it doesn't seem like work because we're all passionate about loving America.
Yeah. So I encourage people to check that out too.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for being with me. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you. God bless.